Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I'm ready to do my full review on the ZT-308. I've actually been ready to do this review for a long time, and it kind of slipped through the cracks. I've had this knife for 2 months now, a little over 2 months I think, and I had carried it enough and used it enough by like week 3 with it that I could have reviewed it, but this one's happening now. So I never know whether to call ZTs their full 4-digit number, because some of them use the 4th digit. Never know whether, like this one's the 0308. That's something I talk about in almost all of my ZT reviews, I think, is that I don't quite know what to call them. I'm just going to go with 308, because it sounds like the rifle caliber, and I think that's what they were going for, and I don't know. I'm on the fence. Sometimes I think a numbered naming system works well, because if you get it and follow it, then it's kind of systematic. But for people on the surface level, I don't know. I think naming your knives is a little more catchy. Anyway, now that they're doing this whole kind of bullet caliber thing on a lot of their knives, I guess maybe that helps. And it is what it is. So this knife is a little bit different from a factory version in one way, and that is the pocket clip that's on it. I actually bought this knife directly from Adam Purvis, A Purvis Knives. This is one of his custom clips. I used bug spray today, and for some reason, it's not doing the trick. Anyways, this is a custom milled titanium clip from Adam Purvis, and I've liked it, so I haven't felt any need to take it off and put it back to the factory clip. I just have been enjoying this one. This knife doesn't get carried a ton for me, but it gets carried. This knife is bigger and heavier than what I would typically put in pocket, especially in summer, when oftentimes this time of year I'm wearing thin shorts and a t-shirt and flip-flops, and carrying a knife this heavy, if you're wearing thin shorts, it's just kind of brutal in the pocket all day. But if I happen to be wearing thicker pants for a day, or at least thicker shorts like Dickies or something, then it's fine. This knife carries quite well, I've found, for its size and weight, but it is big and heavy. Like, that's going to be a thing no matter what. You can only do so much with pocket clip angling and contouring to get around the physics of size and weight. But yeah, so I guess let's talk about the materials of this knife real quick, especially since it's been so long since I did my first impressions on it. And then I'll talk about my experiences with it, and I'll probably go a little bit into Medford. You'll see. Anyways, so on the show side, we have a G10 scale. This one is Coyote Brown. I'm not crazy about the color on this knife, with the satin blade and all that, but it works. It's not hideous to me. I know some people hate that color on the show scale. There are some like micarta options out there and other colored G10, so I've thought about switching it, but at the end of the day, I really like the factory texture that they've put on here. It's not like a peel ply G10 where it's got like the gritty, like Spyderco style, or just kind of typical G10 like grittiness. This one instead, it has this like milled pattern in it. And what's coolest to me about the milled pattern, I would be less resistant to getting rid of it if it wasn't mirrored on the lock side, because the titanium is milled with the exact same pattern, and it just matches it so well, and I really like that about it, that there's kind of continuity on either side of the knife. Something's moving over there. Anyway, the blade on this one is CPM 20CV. This one is serial number 0267. I don't know if I noticed that before. 67 is my lucky number, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, it's a big blade of 20 CV, relatively thick, although it's not crazy thick. Like, it's acceptable thickness for a folding knife, I think. They made this knife big, but I don't think they were just intentionally trying to make like the biggest knife they possibly could for no reason. Like, ZT has made knives, I think, even bigger than this one. This isn't insane for ZT. It's a little bit insane for where ZT's been going, that now all of a sudden we've got this big boy in the lineup again. But I'm glad that they're playing this game, because ZT in my brain is this kind of knife. This is what I expect from, and frankly want from, ZT. So, yeah, titanium, frame lock, stainless steel insert, G10 on the show side, big honkin' pivot with holes through it. I don't know if you picked up on that, but you can see through. Something's moving over there. Anyway, you can see through the knife, through this hole there. I don't find any functional advantage to having that there. Some people are really off-put about it because they think it's going to get a bunch of gunk into their pivot and it runs on bearings, and so you don't want another access point for muck to get in there. Like, fair, yeah, I agree. I don't think it's got any structural advantage. It might be even a disadvantage, but it doesn't particularly bother me either. So yeah, those are our materials. That's the construction. It's a fairly simple construction in today's standards, but everything on here is done really, really well. The milling on this titanium especially is impressive to me. I really like the pattern that they've put on here. I like the way it feels in hand. I like that it's mirrored on the G10 and that the G10 has a good level of grip because of it, but it's not gritty. It's not abrasive. It's just, it feels pleasant in hand to me. And this knife fills my hand really, really well. It's a big knife. And so I've got even a little extra real estate if I want to kind of choke back. If I'm choking forward, I can kind of come right up onto the guard. I like that this handle is neutral enough that I can move my hand around and it's not bothersome. It really just, it fits my hand better than I would have thought it would before having it in hand, because I don't have huge hands. I wear a size medium glove, extra medium, because I fill it out nice is kind of what I usually say, but I wear medium gloves, and so for my hands to not feel too small for this knife and have it be this big is a testament to how they've shaped this handle, because a lot of big knives don't feel comfortable for small hands. And not that they have to, but I like it when they do, because I happen to have fun with big knives now and then, and if they're uncomfortable for my hand, that's a deal breaker. A knife needs to go in my hand. It's what a knife is designed to do. So, yeah, I like the materials. I've had great experience with the blade so far. I haven't done so much that I frankly should see any kind of wear on the edge of this 20CV. I've done some cardboard, some zip ties, I've done a little bit of wood. I'll probably be doing a little bit of testing that you may have already seen part of if I'm looping it into this video. Time will tell how that goes. But yeah, I've done some wood, some kind of like overhanging brush on the trail as I've been hiking, and then a lot of just household stuff. And this edge is doing great. It came very sharp from factory. It's still very sharp now. Oh, it's a squirrel. There's a squirrel up there. If it gets close enough, maybe you'll get to see me throw a ZT308 at a squirrel. I wouldn't do that. Anyway, let's talk, because I think it'll be a little bit illustrative, Medford for a second. Because not too long ago, actually about the time that I got this or was doing my first impressions of it, I was reviewing the loaner Medford 187 DP that I borrowed from Kyle from DTOM Knives and Gear. And if you don't remember, or if you haven't seen those videos that I did about the Medford, especially the conclusion, I think that Medford is garbage. I don't think it's a good knife. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. I found way more flaws than I did positives with it, and I just frankly really didn't like it. Somebody in the comment section of, I don't know if it was the review or the first impressions or what, it doesn't matter. It's not even like it was like that offensive. I typically get very nice comments. Every now and then I get some hilariously negative ones, but this one wasn't even like mean or anything, but somebody who I would say is probably a fan of Medford knives said it was unfair that I complained about the weight of the Medford 187 DP, because I had just, in my first impression, said that so far I was liking this knife, and it's only about an ounce different from that Medford. So on paper, I think that's a fair line to draw. An ounce isn't, it's a fairly negligible difference in weight. Somebody who can tell an ounce in their pocket between 7 ounces and 8 ounces, or 6 and 7, whatever these are, like, you'd have to be kind of discerning. So I think that's a fair line to draw. And this is also a big, kind of overbuilt, admittedly, knife, right? Here's the thing, though. Everything about that Medford, and the way it was shaped, the way the handle was shaped, the way the blade was ground, the thickness of the blade overall, for what I think a knife should be able to do. Just the way it carried, the way the pocket clip felt, the chunkiness of it in my pocket, it was pretty polar opposite from this one. In fact, I think I should probably send this knife to Kyle to see what he thinks of it. Not that I'm trying to prove to him that Medfords suck. He's allowed to like that knife. Anyone is. But this knife, the handle's contoured, and it fits my hand well. This knife, the blade is ground well. It's a nice tall grind that gets relatively thin behind the edge while still being thick enough to be a hard use knife, right? But it's ground appropriately to still do knife things. That Medford sucked in my hand. It sucked in my pocket. I didn't like cutting with it. I didn't like the action on it. Like, there wasn't a thing on it that I could really say that I liked. This, I like the way it cuts. I like the way it feels in my hand. I like the way it carries in my pocket for how big it is. Is this a dream in the pocket? No, it's a big, heavy knife. But they've done some intelligent things in terms of the way that they've shaped it, and the way that they've contoured things, and the angle that it sits in your pocket, the way that the flipper tab is actually kind of in line with the thickest part of the knife anyway, so you don't have this big flipper tab sticking out. Like, there's a lot that's good happening here for the size of this knife and pocket. In fact, when we get to like winter, not that there's really such a thing as real winter in Southern California, but when I'm wearing thicker pants every day and like a hoodie or a jacket and that kind of thing, this knife is like, in jeans, it's not a big deal. It carries well for its size. It's no bug out in pocket, but my point is that just because a knife is big doesn't always mean that it's cumbersome. Sometimes big is done well in terms of how it actually comes together and performs. And another thing I'll say, just to twist the knife in the Medford guys a little bit, that Medford was vastly more expensive than this ZT. And I think it's worth, in my estimation of materials, fit and finish, how a knife goes together, all of that. Both made in the US. One's a small company, one's a giant company here, but both made in the US, both premium materials. This knife feels so much nicer to me. And it's not just because it's on bearings and so the action is smoother, but the machining that's done here, the shaping that's happened here, the way the blade is ground, all of the aspects of this knife feel way more quality to me than that Medford did. That felt like two slabs of titanium that were roughly cut into a handle shape, and then a blade that was roughly cut into a blade shape, and then some hardware pinned it all. Like, it didn't feel finished to me. It felt like something a buddy of mine who's not a knife maker could have made in his garage if you gave him a weekend. Like, I didn't see the value there. This feels really nice to me. I like the way this knife, just the quality of it. It's apparent to me. This feels like a $300 knife to me, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, is what these are. I think I even paid a little less for this one because it was secondary, but it also had this clip on it. Like, this value to me just feels, frankly, pretty good. And sometimes when I look at ZT's lineup, I don't really see the value compared to their competitors. Just the other day, I was on River's Edge Cutlery's site doing some shopping, as I oftentimes do, and I was just kind of comparing some Spydercos that I'm thinking about, that may be kind of on my hit list, seeing what's coming that's not there yet, and then I was also looking at some of Benchmade's lineup, and ZT should, on paper, kind of be playing in that same game as the nicer Spydercos and nicer Benchmades. And when I was looking at the ZTs, it seemed like the amount that they're asking for some of those models didn't quite line up. And that's subjective, sure, but my point is, I think this one feels like it's worth what they're asking for it. And, I don't know, more materials doesn't always have to mean more money. I was actually just talking to a buddy about this on Instagram the other day, and he's in the process of designing a smaller knife, and he was worried about the perception that because it's small, it shouldn't be worth a premium price point, because when people hold it, they feel that there's less materials there, and so they feel like they're getting gypped if it was expensive. And I think that there's a little bit of that, and I'm guilty of feeling it a lot, where because this is a big heavy lot of these materials, that it feels like I got my money's worth out of it. But I don't think that's what makes me feel like this is a $300 knife. I think it really is how it all came together. If this knife was half the size and still functioned the same way that it does, I think I'd still agree that it could be a $300 knife. I see how they got there on this one, and I like that about it, because oftentimes pricing can be a funny thing. So my point is, with all of this, on this knife, I like the ergos. I like the way it cuts. I like the way it carries for being a bigger knife. It's like it's in a different category for me in this size. And compared to other knives this size and weight that I've tried carrying, this one might be my favorite. Like, I really do enjoy the way this knife rides in pocket. I like the way it performs. The cutting I've done with it, it's been very good for me. I like the way it fills my hand. I like just about everything about it. Do I love this knife? Is this my favorite knife in my collection? No, it's not. But for what it is, it's very, very good. And because this knife was a gift from my wife for my birthday, it's a forever knife for me. This is a knife that I'm not going to be letting go of. Out of principle, knives that are gifts from my wife, I don't let go of, even though I kind of picked this and ordered it, and she just wrapped it and gave it to me. But it was my birthday gift from my wife, and so I'm glad that I've come to the conclusion that I like it. But that being said, I'd still be honest if I didn't like this knife, even though it's a forever knife because it was a gift. I'm really glad that it worked out, that I do like it so much, because I'm stuck with it. So there's that. But yeah, this has been a fun one. I'm really enjoying owning this knife. Every time I put it in my pocket, I don't seem to regret it. I don't seem to get a mile down the road and think, oh, why did I put this heavy thing in my pocket? Like, it just functions quite well for its size and weight and all of that. It's quite an excellent knife. So I guess that'll be my full review of the ZT-0308. Thank you for checking it out with me, and I'll see you on the next one. Alright, so I was doing some testing, did a little batoning, which you probably shouldn't do with a folding knife like this, but the lock bar has just, oh, there we go. It got quite stuck. Let's see how lockup is now. Oh, it's still solid. There's no side to side, no front to back. So apparently it had just kind of traveled over a little bit, walked in and got a little too tight there. But we are back to where we should be. Yeah, this knife feels like it did before now. So that's good. We're back to normal.